Welcome to the second lesson of Module 14, a two-factor implementation with SMS. So in the previous lesson, we had a look at the two-factor implementation using a soft token, using a mobile application to generate the code. In this lesson, we're going to have a look at the same kind of implementation, but this time using an actual SMS service to generate that code instead of the mobile app. Alright, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to discuss and understand how 2FA works with SMS. And then of course we're going to jump into the implementation. We are going to set up this SMS service with Twilio and we're going to set everything up with Spring Security. Alright, so let's jump right into it. Alright, so in this lesson we're actually going to do things slightly differently. We are going to have a look at the running, fully done application using SMS. We're going to see exactly how that works, and then we're going to circle back and we're going to work on the implementation. So for the time being, let's actually sign up. Let's configure the phone number, and then let's see how the code gets sent over SMS and how we're going to be able to log in. Alright, so let's start the process with signing up. So the first thing we do is register this new user here. And now let's log in. So at this point we're logging in with standard credentials. That was the SMS hitting my phone here. I'm now basically grabbing the code from the phone and we're logged in. So as you can see, the process is quite straightforward and quite quick. However, the process can still take a few seconds, and the way that is usually mitigated is using a Remember Me style of functionality. So basically, once the user has logged in, they're not going to be prompted to go through the 2FA process again for a while. Now that may be 1 or 2 weeks, or it may even be a full month. And so basically the process brings a lot of extra security for not that much inconvenience. Alright, so now that we've seen how this will all fit together, let's now actually start setting this up. So the very first thing we'll need to define here is we're going to have to integrate with some SMS service that's going to give us the capability of sending SMS. Now that wasn't so easy a few years back, but luckily things are moving very fast in this space, so now we do have several options for international and very mature SMS services. And out of those services we are going to use Twilio, and so we're going to add the Twilio SDK into our Maven POM right here. And with Twilio support, let's also open up the application property file and let's set up our Twilio account in there. At this point, my Twilio account is already set up. We're not going to go through the whole process of setting up an account with Twilio for a couple of reasons. First of all, they have really good documentation as well as really good support, so setting up an account is going to be quite easy. And second of all, there are slight differences in the interface according to your home country. So according to the country that you're creating the account from. Alright, so let's consider that the account has been set up, and let's now paste in our account information. So there we go. We have now defined the SID, the token, as well as the sender number. And that is pretty much all that's required in order for us to start running and sending SMS messages on top of Twilio. We're now going to set up the simple Twilio template or client, and that is going to be the bean that we're going to inject and use whenever we want to send a Twilio message. First, we need the values that we've just defined. And now we need to actually define the bean. And there we have it, a very simple Twilio REST client that we can actually start using to allow our application to start sending SMS messages. Now, the very next step is to define the operation that the client side can use in order to trigger the sending of this SMS. So during the authentication process, this new operation, the operation that we're going to define now, that is going to be triggered by the client side, and that's going to actually send the SMS. So first of all, the controller itself and this Twilio REST client that we have wired in, Now we're going to inject the sender number. We're going to need that when we send the SMS. And now let's define the full operation. So we're going to define and expose this operation that's going to trigger the sending of the SMS. And there we have it. This is the entire operation that is going to send the SMS with the code to the user that's signing into the system right now. The only thing that's left to do here is to define the phone number of the user. So let's go ahead and do that now. And now that everything's compiling, let's go through this method line by line and see exactly what's happening. So first of all, of course, we are retrieving the user from our persistence layer because we're going to need the secret and the phone number of this particular user when we want to send them the SMS. The second thing that's happening is that we are preparing this message. So we're going to send a body, and this body is actually going to contain the verification code. This code that we're generating right here with the TOTP library, the one that we did use in the previous lesson, we're then specifying the to, meaning the phone number of the user, and then we're specifying the from, meaning of course the phone number that the system is using to send this SMS from. Now, when this message is done, we are simply triggering the sending process through the Twilio REST client. That's why we injected the client, and that's how we're going to send through it. Now, a quick note here is that this operation will actually send SMS messages. And because this is actually called at a point of the client lifecycle where the client is not yet authenticated, we're going to have to make sure that the operation is secured some other way. Now, a very simple way to do that is with basic authentication, and there are other ways to do it as well. But the main point is to make sure that this code operation isn't public. Because if this were a public operation, even though it's not going to be a vulnerability, because this will simply trigger the SMS sending, so while it doesn't put the system itself at risk, it could be very annoying for your end users. If you leave this operation open and then an attacker simply starts hitting this endpoint, then your system is potentially sending a lot of SMSs that users should not receive. So basically, it's very important that this operation will be secure. Now, taking a step back and looking at this entire implementation, you might be noticing that we actually haven't changed a whole lot. So even though we switched from allowing the user to obtain the token via that soft token mobile application to allowing them to get the token via SMS, most of the implementation is actually going to be the same. Because we have basically decoupled the way that the user obtains the token from the actual implementation at the point where the system gets the token. So it doesn't really matter how the user obtains the token, as long as the user is able to obtain it either through SMS or through a mobile application or through some other means. As long as they're able to obtain it, they're going to be okay and they're going to be able to log in. And so this wraps up our 2FA SMS implementation as well. We have the sending of the code, and once we get the code, we're using the exact same mechanism from the previous lesson. So there we go. We are now fully able to use the system, get the SMS with the verification code, and log in properly. Alright, hope you're excited. See you in the next one.